Welcome to There Is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs, and I've been in business since 1994. That's a long time, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start out by thanking our sponsors, Jonathan and Lynn Gilden at the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. They currently have over 275 star reviews on Zillow and over 100 million in sales between the two of them. That's pretty darn good if you ask me. They can be reached at 386-451-2412 or at thegildengroup.com. All right, so let's talk a little bit of fundamentals here today in resistance training or strength training. A lot of times if I'm surfing the old internet or social media pages like a lot of us do out of boredom or whatever, usually mindlessly when we're doing other things like watching TV or talking to our friends. Just kidding on that one. I follow different health and fitness accounts just for curiosity reasons. Some of them are actually really good, and some of them I just kind of follow for entertainment. But not a morning or evening whenever I'm looking goes by that I don't pull up a video, and a lot of times it's videos people send me actually, but it'll be somebody doing something like super creative with their strength training, and it looks awe-inspiring. I mean, of course it does. I mean, that's the point of the video. It'll be a male or a female in hardly any clothes, and they pretty much will have a gymnast style body, meaning very tight, very lean, muscular, and they'll be doing something that's near impossible for 99.9% of the population, even super fit people, because there's different aspects of fitness. So just because somebody can do something that looks like a super trick like a gymnast doesn't mean that somebody who is fit trying to be more fit should aspire to do that. But most of the time I'll pull up these videos and that's what I'll see, and I'll give you a few examples of what they were or are. So the other morning I clicked on a video of somebody I don't even follow on Instagram, but as you all probably know, anybody under 60 or 50 know if they're on Instagram, a lot of the accounts that pop up are sponsored, so they might not even be people you follow, but people that are similar to people you follow. And look, I pay for certain Instagram ads and Facebook ads as boost as well. So, it's just something businesses do. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of them are not even people we follow, so they get our attention. I noticed that primarily with Reels on Facebook, which is, I guess, their version of a video of TikTok, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, so the other day I pulled it up and there was a guy in gym short shorts, sitting on the floor. I think he had shoes on. Did not have a shirt on, looked ripped, shredded. He picks up a kettlebell from a seated position, kind of goes into this like one-arm side plank thing, and then picks up the kettlebell and brings it around him. Hard to describe this without showing you. Puts it essentially behind his back while he's suspending himself with his other arm in a kind of a weird side plank position where his knees are kind of touching the ground. And then he switches hands and somehow pulls this kettlebell back up. And then he sits down and, it definitely looks impressive. And there's no question, like, to me, and probably to most people, that when you watch gymnasts, it's pretty awe-inspiring. I don't know that this guy was a gymnast. Looks like he may have been a little too heavy to be one. Not fat by any means, very lean, but gymnasts are actually of low body stature. So, but he definitely had that kind of strength. And so I watched that one, and I'm thinking, okay, so that's pretty cool. And he went on and on about how It's a great way to train his oblique muscles and his core, and how you can get a midsection like that. And that's one of the exercises in his repertoire that, of course, he was willing to send you if you send a subscription to his email. But besides the point, I've beat a dead horse with this, that you can't outrun a poor diet or whatever. So it's literally about how you eat determines how lean you're going to be. Besides all that, I think everybody that listens gets that, hopefully. It's also this is about fundamentals with resistance and strength training. So, okay, or he could have done some bicycle crunches and target those obliques. Or he could use a rotation machine at any YMCA or gym if you got a membership. If you're at a small hotel, boutique style fitness place, they all have cable machines and you can do rotary type movements for those obliques. So I just named 3 you can do anywhere: home, bicycle crunches, big gyms, rotary torso machines, smaller gyms, cable machines, and of course you could do the bicycle anywhere, right? So I mean, okay, that's cool and everything, but you don't have to do that. And of course the idea is to sell the videos. I get that. It's just, in us professionals that watch this stuff, this is how we're critiquing it. To a lot of people, they're going, oh wow, so I have to do that to get those kind of obliques, when in reality most people that have really ripped obliques like that and abs aren't doing anything of the sorts of that time wasting exercise. And yes, it is a time wasting exercise. All right, so that's just one example. I thought it was hilarious. And in case you're wondering, no, I don't comment and stuff. I'm not going to open up the Twitter trolls and get ripped for my jealousy. I'm sure it'll be portrayed as to why I don't believe in that type of exercise, or why I don't look like said gentleman. So no, I don't. I just kind of personally don't follow most accounts like that. As I said, it was just sent to the account. And secondly, I scan, keep going, and use it for material to open up a podcast, obviously. So the point is there's all sorts of stuff that you're going to see out there, that people are doing new and improved ways to do strength training. And I say improved ways, jokingly, because the tried and true, the simple, really, really works great. And it's been working for many, many, many years. So today I just want to cover what you need to do as far as your strength training goes. And it's really, really simple. And the people with the most certifications and degrees and knowledge in all this know this. So when you pull up the National Strength Conditioning Association bulletins and journals, which I'll read, they're remotely interesting, or even the latest American College of Sports Medicine Health and Fitness newsletter was pretty good. It covered this exactly what I'm talking about. So the most educated people don't come up with the most fancy, intricate, nearly impossible ways to do things, because that doesn't serve a lot of the population. What serves the population is to teach people the right form of exercise that everybody can do. And if you're super elite, you just simply do it more, harder, versus coming up with unique ways. I'm not against variety at all. It's just that most of the variety you see out there is ridiculous, and the whole idea is to sell advertising and sell you subscriptions. So if you fall for that, that's on you. But not necessary at all. So what we know now is that for strength training, and really for ADLs, activities of daily living, what we need is a basic squat exercise of some form or another, a basic push exercise of some form or another, or a couple different push exercises, which I'll cover in a second. So take, for example, the squat. A squat is a critical motion to human movement. And again, you can see all kinds of different fancy varieties and versions of this to do on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, I'm sure. But really, a squat is a squat. It's a squat. And it can be done with your body weight, which we call an air squat or body weight squats. It can be done in a Smith machine that adds a little bit of resistance, which is a Smith machine is a machine version of a free weight, essentially. It can be done with free weights, whether it be barbells on your back and shoulders or dumbbells held up in front of you like a goblet or held to your sides. It could be done with a TRX, which is a way that you can use your body weight to help guide you and take some of the load in some cases, add load in other cases. It could be done with bands and tubes, but it really doesn't matter how you do it, just squat. And there's nothing wrong with a nice, simple version of a squat. There's nothing wrong with an air squat. Matter of fact, the only thing wrong with the bodyweight squat is you're not going to get a lot stronger if you can do excess of 20 reps pretty easily. That means that you really need some load if you want to get stronger. So that's really the only negative to that very simple exercise. For some people, that could be enough. And again, I can't stress the importance of a squat in your ADLs. Working with a lot of senior citizens, working with people in my very early days in this industry at a physical therapy place, watching people try to get out of chairs as they get older and deconditioned, you realize how essential the squat is, because that's what the squat is. So if you get to the point where you really have a difficulty in squatting, then you're probably having difficulty getting out of a chair. So squat is a critical motion. Does not take anything fancy whatsoever. All right? And that works your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings. Now, a lunge is slightly different. A lunge means you're essentially doing a bilateral squat, okay? So it's different than a single leg squat, because in a lunge, both feet are on the ground. You just happen to be in a split position, one leg forward, one leg backward. So there's a lot of different ways to do a lunge, but that does separate it from a single leg squat, because a single leg squat is just that, a single leg squat. A lunge is different because your knee is in a different position to your ankles than it would be with a squat. And some would argue it's very important as you run and walk and things like that, because you're doing that with more of the muscle demands in a single leg different position. In other words, your femur being out in front of you on your femur and the other leg being behind you. So that's a very functional human movement, all right? So a basic lunge or split squat can be done with your body weight. It could be done with dumbbells. It could be done in a Smith machine. It could be done with barbells. Nothing fancy. It just can be done, and arguably should be done. All right. Then you have your basic push. So a push uses your pectoral muscles, your deltoids, and your triceps. Now, if you're doing a proper push, you just worked all three of those pushing muscles of the upper body, the pecs, the shoulders, and the triceps. I'll get into what we call accessory movements when I finish these basics here. So a push exercise is critical. It's very important. You want to be able to push yourself up from the ground or push away from something. So using a push motion is critical to human movement. It is as simple as doing push-ups. Again, follow any Instagram account, and you're a fitness account, and most likely, unfortunately, you're going to see all these crazy varieties of different ways to do push-ups. Again, if you're simply bored out of your mind doing basic push-ups, okay. But most of it is just completely unnecessary. I tell people all the time in all realms of exercise, it's like, well, they'll complain, well, it's just gotten too easy. I'm like, well, then do more. I mean, go harder. You don't have to necessarily always just look for something different. Go harder, and this is a little bit off subject, but it's sort of when I hear people say, well, I can cover 3.1 miles, so the 5K isn't really a challenge anymore. I want to do longer. It's like, okay, or go harder. I mean, any distance is extremely challenging if you push yourself. So I don't know, that's a weird argument you hear from people sometimes, and in both cases I think it's a little bit disingenuous, meaning that they don't want to go harder. They just would rather find some unique way to do something, or in the case back to the aerobic endurance training, a way to go a little bit longer and not push themselves. Not the case. I mean, everybody has to own their own motives. I'm not here to judge that, but I will say that that's a possibility with people. So you make it harder. Now, if you want to do a machine version of a push-up, that's a chest press machine. It could be a hammer chest machine. It could be a Nautilus chest press machine, a Cybex chest press machine, a cable press. If you want to use free weights, that could be a bench press. It could be dumbbells if you want to use dumbbells. Smith machine again. So there's all these different ways to press. And no, they're not that different from each other. That's what's so maddening when you actually do have a physiology and a kinesiology degree. You're like, no, it's you're using the same frickin' muscles in the same joint actions. You're doing the same thing, which in the case of a press is what we call a horizontal shoulder adduction. That means that your humerus is coming towards your body as you're pushing out, and then the follow-through of it is tricep extension or elbow extension. So you're locking your elbows out. It's the same motion whether it be a push-up or a chest press or a bench press. We should do it, and we should get strong at those motions. There's no question about it. What you pick for your exercise has a lot to do with what you have. And by the way, before you start thinking push-ups are the easiest of the group, you're wrong. They're probably the hardest and can definitely be made to be the hardest. Or actually, to be better put, the chest press and the bench press can be made to be easier than a push-up. Because when you're doing a standard push-up where your toes are on the ground, you're pushing up 70% of your body weight. Now, it drives me nuts sometimes when I see coaches who don't know what they're doing tell their kids to do push-ups and they don't even have the adequate strength yet. So they're using horrible form because a 10-year-old doesn't have the strength to do 70% of their body weight yet. So they're actually better off if you put them on like a little Nautilus machine where you're putting 5 pounds on each side, and then they're only pushing out 10 pounds, 5 pounds on each side. So they're pushing out something like 10% of their body weight. You see? Simple math there. So that's a lot easier for them than a push-up. So don't think the push-ups are easy. For a lot of people, they're actually harder. Again, everything can be made harder or easier based on increasing or decreasing intensity. You don't have to get more creative necessarily. All right, so what you have is what you pick. If you've got a variety like we do at our studio, we do a variety of different things. People will do push-ups. Sometimes they'll do chest press on the hammer machine. Sometimes they'll do chest press with dumbbells. Sometimes they'll do bench press on the Smith. Sometimes they'll do bench press with free weights. Just depends. Depends on what they're working on, what they like, and where they do their best work. Because that's what it comes down to. Where are you at your best? Not what's easiest. Not what's the most fun. Working out isn't always supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun at the end because you feel accomplished. But where you do your best work, where do you feel it the most? All right, then you're going to have a major pull, and pulls can be pull ups or chin ups, and the only difference between the two is a supinated grip versus a pronated grip. So an overhand grip versus an underhand grip. It could be machine pull downs. It could be barbell rows. It could be dumbbell rows. It could be seated rows on the machine or high rows on a hammer machine. There's so many different ways to do a basic pull. So a pull is either a pull up or pull down or a row. Now, if you're doing a pull up or a pull down, that's called a vertical pull because you're pulling straight down from the sky, right? If you're doing a row, that's called a horizontal pull because you're pulling linear or straight in. Both are great. Both work the lats. Both work the rhomboids. And yes, both work the biceps. Because just like the triceps, which is the final part of the push, the elbows extending, When you do pulls, the final part of the pull in is coming from the biceps. So you're working those muscles too. And yes, everybody should do them. You need to be able to pull things, right? You need to be able to pull whatever you need to pull. For your ADLs at home, we need to have good, strong, muscular lats, rhomboids, all right? Now we move on to rotations. Rotations are like so underrated when it comes to the core, and I've talked about this in other podcasts. So your core muscles are made up of your rectus abdominals, your transverse abdominals, your internal and external obliques, which is what I'm referring to here, and your erector spinae, your lower back muscles. All very important. Now, the first two I named, your abdominal muscles, anterior abdominal muscles, your transverse abs, and your rectus abdominals, are overtrained by the majority of people. And they're overtrained because people think if you work their abs, you're going to make your midsection smaller, which is called spot reduction. And it's a complete hoax. It is not true. It's just a myth. So that's the majority of the reason why they train. Another reason is because doctors say you need to strengthen your core to protect your back. Okay, that's true to an extent. But really the most important muscle to strengthen when you want to strengthen your core, to strengthen your lower back is, yes, your lower back. So we need to strengthen our lower back. That's critical too. Now that's part of an accessory motion, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the spinal rotators, the obliques, are actually moving side to side or hinging back and forth laterally. So that's critical. So they're actually core muscles that are very, very functional, right? Very, very, very functional. So when you rotate, that's your obliques. When you pick something up and bend over at the same time, like bend to your right to pick something up with one arm, that's your obliques. They need to be strengthened. It's a critical motion. Now again, you can do that because I entered this whole thing with the story. You can do that with doing simple bicycle crunches where as you crunch up, you're twisting your right elbow to your left knee. That can be done. Again, the only negative is sometimes it gets a little too easy for people. Typically, when you can do more than 20 reps of something and you're not adding load, you're probably in most cases not getting stronger, and that's going to happen. So then you might need a certain machine to help you do that. And again, that can happen with the rotary torso machine. If you're doing the machines at a YMCA or a gym, it can be done with a cable machine where you're rotating. And if you don't have that, you can pick up a medicine ball or a dumbbell, lean back, and do what we call Russian twists. You're going to have to just imagine that where you're rotating your spine, you're leaning back about 45 degrees, and you're holding a weight either at your chest or to the sides, one way or the other. But that is a loaded way, with not having to break the bank to buy an expensive machine, to train your oblique muscles. Critical to do. Very, very important. Doesn't take these crazy exercises you see people do where they're hanging from one arm and then lifting their right foot up over their left hand and all this crazy crap that 99% of the people can't do and would be wasting their time doing it because most people need to move a lot more. So as they're trying to master this exercise, which is completely ludicrous, time would be better spent out on a 3-mile walk or jog for sure, because strength training doesn't need to take up all this time whatsoever. Most people can strength train appropriately in 25 minutes. I mean, plain and simple. If you're doing a lot longer than that, you're probably working inefficiently, doing too many extraneous exercises and talking too much, to be honest with you. And we teach more higher intensity, zero in on what we need to do style of strength training. And then finally we have the hinge. And the hinge motion is critical to human movement. And that's bending over. Bending over the correct way, which you don't have your video watching, but that means poking your rear end out as you keep your chest up as you bend over. That's the appropriate form of a hinge. Very critical to human movement. And then that gets that lower back I was just talking about before strengthened if you do a back machine at the YMCA or at your local Golds or wherever you work out. Or you can do a Cobra exercise on the ground. But like other bodyweight exercises, if you're able to do more than 20 reps pretty easily, you're probably not getting stronger if you don't add a load. So after a while, that cobra can be a little too easy, and we might need to do a machine. It's kind of really hard to strengthen that lower back without a machine and or dumbbells, because if you do a deadlift, which can be done with barbells or dumbbells, so free weights, essentially you're doing the same movement as you would do if you're doing a cobra, except cobra doesn't have as much range of motion, and the low back, except you're seated on the low back machine. So again, all these movements have the same characteristic of leaning forward, bending forward. Leaning forward and bending over at the same time is a hinge motion that, let me repeat, can be done with deadlifts with slightly straight legs, can be done with a back machine, or could be done on the ground. Doesn't take all these fancy different ways to do it. It all comes down to, what do you have? If you only have body weight to use for resistance, that's absolutely better than nothing. But on certain exercises, most notably squats and crunches or bicycle crunches and cobras, probably won't have enough load to make them stronger, but you can at least maintain. Push-ups is hard for most people. That might be enough load for you. Pull-ups are definitely hard. Again, way harder than using machine pull downs, because with machine pull downs you could do a percentage of your body weight. With a pull-up, it's all you got, or you can use different devices to help you with that. Now, those are the basic movements that we need to strengthen. Okay? A squat, a lunge, a push, a pull, a hinge, and rotation. All right? They're all important. Then after that, we have what are called accessory motions. Accessory motions are motions that isolate a specific muscle, but it's not core to human movement. By no means does it mean it's not important. Yes, it's important. It's just, if you are doing those other motions, most likely you are hitting every one of those muscle groups. So for example, if you're doing the squat with load, you're hitting your glutes, you're hitting your quads, you're hitting your hamstrings. So does that mean you shouldn't isolate your quads ever? No. Why? Because as I was describing to somebody I know over the weekend, that you want to strengthen part of your quad if you're having runner's knee or knee problems, certain kind of knee problems, not all knee problems, so you can't just take a prescription and apply it to everything, but most knee problems can be strengthened or really improved on a leg extension machine doing what we call short arc quads, which means you do a full range, then you do a little bit less, a partial range, and go back up, because you're really isolating your vastus medialis, which does not get isolated when you squat. When you squat, primarily the rectus femoris and the vastus lateralis are the muscles that get strengthened primarily, and the medialis gets a little bit neglected. So sometimes runners tend to have a weakened medialis, and then they get some running issues. So yes, accessory motions are critical, and critical for rehab. But if you're not rehabbing, may not be necessary. May not be bad either, unless you're taking up too much time at the gym and you're looking for efficiency. But I could tell you, for rehab, they're phenomenal. Other accessory motions that may not have a lot to do with rehab, but a lot of people do, is basic arm stuff. So like bicep curls and tricep extensions. Is there anything wrong with isolating them? No. But again, it's not part of functional basic human movement. In other words, if you're already pushing out, you're training your triceps. If you're already pulling in, you're training your biceps. If you want to try to isolate them a little more, well then yes, you would want to throw in some bicep curls and tricep extensions, but not necessarily necessary. All right. Another accessory motion, though, that I would say is important for most people that do a lot of cardio, especially running, is hip abduction. That's an accessory motion. Why? Well, because what it is hip abduction, meaning you're pulling your foot away in the middle, so it's like spreading your legs out, so to say. Well, it's not like we walk around doing that, right? We don't walk side to side everywhere we go. So it's not necessarily a functional human movement. But let me tell you, if you don't strengthen the glute medius, you could tend to have some knee issues, because the hip is greatly related, especially the glute medius, to your knee. So a lot of times when runners start having knee issues, it's because they have a glute medius weakness, which allows their foot to turn out too much, and it changes how their heel hits the ground. So these are all rehab type things. So I'm by no means poo-pooing accessory exercises, and I prescribe them often, but most of the time we prescribe these types of exercises for either rehabilitation or prehabilitation. In other words, if somebody's going to be doing a lot of running, then certain exercises like that are critical. If somebody's going to be doing a lot of swimming, accessory motions like shoulder raises and rotator cuff exercises are important. They're considered accessory. But if they're not, and especially in the case of athletes who already have a very busy schedule, or you and I and anybody else who already has a very busy schedule, then we need to make sure we hit those core human movements. So in other words, think movements, not muscle groups so much. All right, I'm going to repeat them again because it's critical, so get your pen out. A squat, a lunge, a hinge. I just put all the lower body together this time. A push, a pull, a rotation. 6. Cover them. Cover those 6. All right, very, very, very important. Now, let me wrap up by thanking our second sponsor, Istanbul Turkish Mediterranean Cuisine. Fantastic vegetarian dishes. Fantastic salads. If you haven't tried them yet, please go up and try them. They're in Ormond Beach at 488 South Young Street, Ormond Beach, Florida, 32174. They'll do pickup and delivery at 386-492-7100, or place your order online at istanbulflorida.com. Until next time, be max fit and be max well.